Something we haven't talked about too much is tonguing and articulation. Time to fix that. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Brian from Airflow Music. Alongside publishing my books for brass players, I've also been producing a bunch of videos with tips to make brass playing easier for you. If you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe to this channel and check out some of the other videos I've been posting. One of the topics that I've been asked about a bunch recently, both in lessons and in comments on YouTube and so forth, is about tonguing. One of the things I'm asked about a lot is how to get a nice clean articulation consistently at the beginning of a note or phrase. And this is something that tends to hold a lot of us up, because we get a little confused about how the tongue actually works. What we're doing is blocking and then releasing the air, and it's that release of the airstream that makes the sound start. So the important thing about getting a nice clean articulation at the beginning of a phrase or at the beginning of a note is to make sure that we start the air with the tongue in place, already blocking the airstream. It's that release that makes it clean. We tend to get a bit uncoordinated with that, so it makes it harder than it needs to be. So what I'm talking about is playing something like this, and I'm playing with a mute in right now because it's a little late at night when I'm recording this. If I want to start a note just with the airstream, it goes something like this, just with a breath attack. Okay, if I do that, then I can put the tongue in the way and stop the air, and then release it again. And you'll hear how nice and clean the articulation is when I do that. Okay, it's nice and clean because I'm already playing the note, so the air is already set up to play that note, and I'm just blocking it in the way. I'm not blowing any extra as I release the tongue. The airstream is already in place. That's what we need to do at the start of any note or phrase. But we don't necessarily want to breath attack the note first and then block it. So we have to know how the air goes for a particular pitch and place that air in place with the tongue in place, already blocking the airstream. So instead you get okay, so each time we're not putting the tongue into that to make the articulation, we're taking it away. We're not going towards the teeth to do it, the tongue's already there, we're just releasing. These are my teeth and this is my tongue. Releasing. Ta, ta, ta. The thing that tends to hold us up and make us go slow when we're tonguing a sequence of notes is that we get into the habit of doing what we've just done and starting the air along with the tongue. In actual fact, for a sequence of repeated notes, whether it's on the same note or a musical phrase, what we need to do is just keep the air moving at all times and just block it with the tongue. We don't need to blow anything extra, so we're not going each time, but instead the air's already going. It's getting that continuous airflow that allows us to get the tonguing nice and cleanly on a sequence of repeated notes. And because we're not stopping and starting the air every time, it means that there's less motion in the embouchure, restraining that air as it starts, and that means we can get our tonguing going much faster. This is still single tonguing. That particular version happens to be a da tongue, but the same applies if you're using a ta tongue. The only difference that the syllable makes is how cleanly it allows the tongue to release the air. How much meat of the tongue you've basically got in the way of the airstream. So that takes some moving parts out and lets us get our tongue moving more quickly. It also really helps us thinking about tonguing in this way if we're dealing with multiple tonguing and trying to figure out what that is. Typically what we do for double tonguing, for instance, it's a rocking backwards and forwards between two different tongue positions. The regular single tongue, which is ta or da, and then another syllable that's further back on the tongue. So for instance, ka or ga. Whichever one happens to work well for you is fine, but what you have to understand is that you've got to block the airstream with it, and hopefully keep it fairly far forward in your mouth, so that there's slightly less moving parts as we do this. So for instance, for double tonguing, I might be going taka 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 ta. That's fairly straightforward. If we're doing triple tonguing, it's a little more complicated. We tend to go ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta. and sequence it with 2 single tongues and the back of the tongue on the third of the triplet. Now the reason this holds us up a little bit is because, quite simply, we're not used to articulating with the syllable on the back of the tongue, the ka. So what we actually need to do to improve our double tonguing and get it coordinated is spend time single tonguing with that ka syllable. Okay, so whatever exercises we've been practicing single tongued at the front of the tongue with ta or da, we do with the back of the tongue. I'll do the same thing. First of all, I'll breath attack the note and then block the airstream with the ka to find out where the position is. Now granted, my double tonguing and triple tonguing isn't the best. It's not something I use every day in the music I tend to play. It's functional, but it's not as clean as some people. But with practice, that can come together and work out quite nicely. So we can start to get into tonguing notes that way. And that's really what you have to do. Practice single tonguing using the ka tongue to get it coordinated and get it working for you, and then get into practicing the coordination between the two. Taka 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 for double tonguing, tataka 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 for triple tonguing. Of course, when you're developing that coordination to begin with, it's important to go slowly, particularly if you're playing things that aren't on the same note, so you can get it nice and clean and consistent. For instance, if I'm playing a simple scale pattern up and down, I can play that with the regular single tongue, or the ka single tongue, or a double tongue. You need to learn to do that nice and cleanly, slowly first, so then I can speed it up and develop the coordination to be able to play it faster. Something like that. I hope you found this helpful. If that raises further questions, please ask them in the comments below. And otherwise, please hit that like button if you've enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll be back on Monday with another exercise of the week, and again next Friday with more trumpet pro tips. I'll see you next time. Now, go practice.